Lazarus Planet, We Were Once Gods, issue 1. Obviously, there's a bunch of different creators because it's 4 short stories in this book. And obviously, last week, none of us were really that enthused about the Lazarus Planet special, and I said pretty much that I don't think I want to read any more of these. I'm only going to check out this next one because it's got creators on it, and it's also following up the Shazam story. And it is Josie Campbell who writes that story, so I was curious. So, while I do think this one's better than the one we got last week, I am definitely not reading any more of these.
So I read the first 2 stories, ran out of time, so I can talk about those 2.
Sure.
But I will say, instantly liked those first 2 stories. I thought they were more interesting than anything in the last one.
I mean, the first one, like, is interesting from a little bit of world building and just the reveal, because the first story is basically the reveal that the Trench have been turned into humans, or Atlanteans, maybe. Like, they've been turned into humanoid-looking people.
So, and I didn't know this, and I thought I knew a lot about that side of the Aquaman universe, that they're part of the ancestral tree of the Atlanteans. So, like, somewhere, so they're not a separate species, right?
Yeah. What that means is that somewhere in the past, an Atlantean, balked a fish.
Yeah. Oh, God. But I wasn't going to take it that way. I was going to take it as they went off into the trench.
The Shape of Water is a true story in the DC universe.
I got to go back and rewatch Creature from the Black Lagoon because I didn't believe the love story was that strong. I've been told I am wrong, and that's where Guillermo got inspiration from. So, and now you're dropping the trench stuff on me. So now the Shape of Aquaman, or the Shape of Aqua, whatever we want to call it.
Is that an extra fin, or are you just happy to see me?
Yeah. But yeah, so like I'd always thought the trench were just like, a separate species of underwater people, right? Not that they were along the, in the, I don't say evolution, but in the line of the Atlanteans, like Arthur. And maybe Arthur's just using that as a metaphor when he says, I see them for what they are, our ancestors. But yeah, I did like the pacing of that story. Manipul, right? So
it's Francis Manipul who's both writing and art. And I think, just to set up what this story actually is, it's kind of this family who lives by the beach who are attacked by what seems to be a human of some kind, but then, a human washes up on shore. They bring him in, but then he starts acting out and attacking them. Yep. And the main crux of it is that the father of this family is very xenophobic or macho. What? I mean, I guess he is, but that's not the point. That's not the important part.
No, but he's got like this toxic, like, this is my house, and this is.
Yeah, but the important part is that he's like effectively racist against superheroes and people with powers, and he's like, oh, this guy could be dangerous. Like, he could have superpowers. I should have just killed him on the beach when we had the chance, kind of thing.
Or he's someone that needs help from a shipwreck, Dad. Like.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. But I think the reason for this setting up with this lens of this character being this prejudiced, individual is that the idea that Aquaman himself is going to have to try and accept that the Trench might actually be, capable of being learning human, or not humans. Like, it's in humans because it's just the word that I go to. But humanoid or Atlantean characters. Like the idea that they now have to be treated and sort of like taken care of and help to evolve into a more intelligent, because this is the thing. Like, we see this Trench that's turned into a humanoid figure. He's attacking the family kind of and the dad, but there's several moments where he kind of sees his reflection and kind of like pauses and reconsiders what he's doing. He's kind of confused. So it's this idea that this new evolution that's happened to them, they have to be nursed into their next stage, and that's something that Aquaman's going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. It's an interesting kind of like reveal to drop in this weird like short story in this special, because I feel like whatever this is going to continue on to next is like, oh, this is going to be a big deal, hopefully. I will say this though, Aquaman, where's the beard? I don't approve of this freshly shaved Aquaman anymore.
Yeah. No. I thought we all agreed that the hybrid Peter David, Captain Aquaman look.
Well, they've kept the long hair though, so it's especially weird. If you're going to go no beard, then have the short hair. But if you're going to have the long hair, he needs to have the beard.
He needs the pirate look. But also what I liked too in the art was that anytime the Trench guy got into more of the primordial behavior, his face changed a little bit, right, in the art to show he's a little bit monstrous still. And I got a little bit worried when he took the dog. I'm glad the dog's okay, you know. You know, but yeah, no, I like the story, and I wonder what's going on with Aquaman, because like we don't have an ongoing Aquaman book right now, so you know, wonder if this is where those are going to pick off, or if there's going to be more Lazarus Planet things, because it's also tied that somehow the volcano affected the trench they were living in.
Yeah. Well, that's what reveals it, because Aquaman references the trench, and you realize, oh, that's what these, because he's got like more of them behind him, and you're like, oh, that's what these are. This is the trench they've transformed because of the Lazarus rain. It just says at the end, to be continued in Dawn of DC, which could mean anywhere, basically, coming up. Right. So we know it's going to come back up at some point, but nothing specific. Whereas some of them have specific, oh, it's that mini-series that's coming after these 2 months or whatever. This is more broad, so we'll see where it pops up, but maybe this confirms there'll be more Aqua-related stuff to come. But the second story, which is a Martian Manhunter story called Songs of Pain by Dan Waters with art by Max Dunbar. It has some stuff at the start and the end where he talks about how he looks at the planet, and he almost, much like the ocean with the waves, he can see waves of like emotion. He can see like, you know, there's like a sort of like spread of happiness here, a spread of fear there, things like that, and it's kind of beautiful to him, right? Which is kind of an interesting visual. It's an interesting idea to concoct.
And I like that that's how he sees the world different than someone like Superman, because they compare that at the end, right? Where when Superman looks at the world, he almost sees like a, you know, the bigger picture, if you will, whereas John can get more, you know, focused by watching these emotional outbursts, and not outbursts, but you know what I mean.
But the main part of the story, though, is that one of the characters who's affected by the Lazarus rains, this guy in Metropolis, who is effectively, he can take someone's like pain from them. So he's, and to be fair, like we get introduced to him where he's already doing that. He's going around the hospital and just taking pain from patients who are dying or who have bad illnesses, but it's becoming too much to handle. And Martian Manhunter comes down to try and help him. But the main conflict is that he's effectively absorbed some of the memory or the tragedy of Doomsday, and he starts to kind of like Doomsday out, and then like Jean tries to absorb it, and then he starts to sort of turn into sort of green version of Doomsday, and it's sort of try to handle this, and then the guy kind of takes it back because Jean you know, can't deal with it. So we get this kind of big red Doomsday looking interpretation, and the guy's able to actually sort of like basically turn it into like a crystal. Like he sort of like condenses it into like a shape, and it's just this sort of crystal that's this like memory of Doomsday. And it kind of, Jean, as he's narrating throughout this story, explains that Doomsday is such a strong idea that, and the whole idea of Doomsday, that he would keep repairing and rebuilding from whatever happened to him. So that even now the trauma and the memory of him could potentially become, like, I both kind of like this but also kind of dislike it. In one way it feels like, oh, somehow there's another way of Doomsday come back, which I thought was a bit whatever.
Well, there's that, but it also reminded me of Morrison's Super Doom idea, right? Where it was this thing that once you know, at your most nihilistic and your most pure what's the word I'm like, cynical, right? That is also a manifestation of Doomsday, right? And so so I like the idea, because once Waters started getting into like the whole, you know, Doomsday tried to hook into the you know, the red and that field, but he couldn't gain foothold and this, that, and the other. I was like, okay, we're not bringing back Doomsday, are we? But then just the whole idea that the memory of him in Metropolis, and he caused such a stir, and that he killed Superman. That's a big enough thing that it could, you know, make him manifest again.
Do you know what I think it is? I think I like the concept of this. I think it just deserves to be told over a slower, more gradual build than just being condensed into like a 13-page story. I think the way it evolves to where there's already like him taking it from his head and trying to fight it in his head, that I feel like we get to that so quick that it kind of like almost makes it feel a bit too, not schlocky, but just too rushed and too much of like a thrown out idea. Whereas if you built this up over time, that the idea that the trauma of that day that sort of seeped into Metropolis can manifest in some way. If you built up to that over time, I think it could be like a great almost existential like story in Metropolis. And maybe with Jean being the main character who's investigating it because he's a telepath or whatever, or maybe someone else, but not a Superman story. So something that's more about another character who can sense
and
that.
Don't forget that John was killed in a way because he was under the disguise of Bloodwind, right? And he was one of the people that responded to Doomsday. So him even having that tie to that would make him a really good character.
Yeah, I think this is like a really interesting con. Like so often I'll complain that these 13-page stories like have no story. This has too much. This is too good for a 13-page story. This needs to be like at the very least like a one bad day size one shot, if not like a full arc of 6 issues.
Well, and maybe we're gonna get some of that with John, with Dan Watters in Dawn of DC, you know?
Yeah, maybe, but I feel like they've rushed through the reveal of this idea too quick, though. I would have loved this to be spread out and explored more.
Yeah, for sure. Because when you get to the end and he hands him because the pressure and the heat of that rage of Doomsday, you know, when he pulls up that crystal, that's what's left of the human that had the powers of the empath.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, just it's such a sad turn. That this guy was trying to do good, and because he absorbed all this pain, you know, and it crystallized, you know.
Imagine, Matt, that if this was like a 6-issue miniseries, that we could actually speculate before we found out what actually was going on. That maybe we find out at the end of issue 2 or 3 that it was actually the manifestation of like the memory of Doomsday and the trauma of that. Like, I would love being able to theorize and talk about what's affecting the people in Metropolis and what's affecting maybe this telepath that we're following or something. Like, I feel there's so much potential with it, and I'm sad that it's just this 13-page story.
Well, and there's that too, and even the beginning when he goes and like he takes that guy's pain away, and with tears in his eyes, he's like, "No wonder you couldn't sleep," right? That is some great character building, right? Of this guy that's going around and absorbing people's pain, and it's just, you know, and that's the Max Dunbar art at play too, because the old guy goes from having this look of pain on his face, right, to he's smiling, and our main guy, I think his name's Ars or RC, is
I wasn't sure how to pronounce it because Ars it sounds like it's the UK way of saying ass, which does not make it sound good to say.
Well, let's say RC then, you know.
RC, okay.
You know, just the tear in his eye, you know, and it tells me everything I need to know about this guy. This guy that got powers from the Lazarus Rain, and instead of, you know, doing like what that one guy did in the John story last week of breaking in and stealing stuff, he goes and starts helping people through Metropolis, because that's the city of Metropolis, right? That's the city that is, you know, that Superman city, the inspirational, he is hope and all that stuff. But yeah, this was definitely worthy of a miniseries, for sure.
Yeah. So I think it suffers from being just as short as it is, but at least it was some interesting concepts. It had that sort of that sad ending where Superman can't see the world the way that Martian Manhunter does, and he feels sad by that. I thought that was a really interesting beat to leave off on. The Wonder Woman story that comes next, by Philip Kennedy Johnson, and art by Jack Herbert, shockingly is the one that I like the least. I think I don't know. I didn't get a whole lot out of it. It was basically like armies of people that Amazons have fought in the past are coming up from the ocean because they're all like, back to life because of the Lazarus Rain. And it's mostly just the fight more than anything. You know, first of all, it's Wonder Woman and the other character she's training, and then eventually Hippolyta it's not Hippolyta, Nubia shows up with the Amazons to help fight. But it's mostly fighting. It's mostly just that. Nubia explains the souls are flooding from the Well of Souls, and that's, you know, Doom's doorway is under assault. So all these like all these mystical connections to like the dead are kind of like going haywire because the Lazarus resin is bringing people back effectively. And it ends with a cliffhanger saying to be continued on Lazarus Planet: Revenge of the Gods. So that's the miniseries that's coming after the main Lazarus Planet stuff is done. So I just felt like this was mostly fighting, and it's clearly just a tease for this miniseries. Now, the miniseries itself might be quite good. I'd be curious to check out the miniseries, but I wasn't feeling this all that much, sadly. So yeah. And then the last story, which is kind of the one that I read it for, because it was the follow up to the Shazam stuff, and by Josie Campbell, with art by Caitlin Yarsky, and it's Mary looking for Black Adam only to find Malik instead, and saying, "Hey, I think you were in my dream. You know, I thought it was Black Adam, but it was kind of a silhouette, so it may have been you. So I need your help to go and get Billy." So they go to the Rock of Eternity. Although it looks very different, you know, they think they go to the Rock of Eternity. I mean, maybe it is something different now, but you know, we get like someone that looks like Billy, you know, in Shazam saying you don't belong here, and of course there's a bit of a fight that breaks out, but Billy's actually been held captive, and effectively quite quickly Malik just says, "Well, wait, if you're connected to the Rock of Eternity, then how can it hold you?" So Billy just says Shazam, and that kind of, you know, brings him back, and he goes back home with Mary, and you know, he hugs all his family, and the big tease at the end, which also sets up Lazarus Planet: Revenge of the Gods, is that the wizard is pissed and is mad and is like, you know what, I keep entrusting my power with others. Clearly, that's, you know, they're all traitors, all of them. None of you are worthy, so it seems like Shazam's going to be coming after the Shazam family. You know, the wizard Shazam, that is. So, you know, again, interesting setup for the story. I definitely didn't enjoy this anywhere near as much as the actual miniseries with Mary. Obviously the voice is still there, and Malik's a nice enough character. You know, I enjoyed what I read of him in the Black Adam book before I dropped it. But again, it feels like kind of a clunky setup to a story. It feels like the resolution to get Billy free was just like a quick, I don't know, it was just so quick, and it felt kind of throwaway, and it's like, oh, that's just already done, I guess. All right, that was easy enough.
And it feels to me like Mary going to save Billy is worthy of its own series, right? Like, that's an arc in a Shazam book.
But it's like half of this is like her meeting Malik for the first time, which is fun. I enjoyed that half of it. But all of the stuff with actually getting Billy free just felt so rushed and just so quick, because, and I don't blame the writer for this, because I assume this is an editorial thing of he needs to be free for the next thing, so this is how much time you've got to do it. So yeah, I was a little disappointed overall with like how this dealt with that story. It just felt really rushed to me. So yeah, very mixed bag again. It's definitely better than last week's special, just because it had some better ideas in it at the very least. I'm curious about this trench thing going forward. I'm curious about possibly this miniseries coming up, and I certainly thought there was a lot of potential in the idea from the Martian Manhunter story. But I think I can imagine though this might be the peak of these, because fundamentally these short stories always leave me just feeling annoyed that I wasted time reading them. So I think this is my last of the specials. I'll come back and read the Omega issue. I'll read the end of the story from Mark Waid, but I don't think I need to ignore these. It feels like these are
just seeds for Dawn of the DC, I think, going forward.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
and some of them might end up being relevant to books that I like later on, but I don't know. I think they're kind of a shorty read, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go back and read the Shazam one. I ran out of time. Again, busy week. So it definitely sounds like something I would have enjoyed. I just feel like the rushing to Billy, after we had just talked about at the end of the Shazam book how much we like Mary.
Yeah.
It's
like we can take time. We can take a couple of years. Give us some more Mary minis.
Yes, please. So
you've just made me fall in love with the idea of like following this status quo for a while, and you're immediately just reverting back to Billy.
And right before we recorded, I started reading the Shazam story with Mary, and the idea that she keeps Hoppy on her shoulder as she goes around too is like another little character thing that, you know, I thoroughly enjoy with Mary. So
yeah. So as far as rating the whole book goes, like, I mean, I'll give it like a 6, because it's got some better things in it. But fundamentally, like, when it comes to these collections of like 13-page stories, like, I find myself more often than not just kind of disappointed by them, because I don't know. So reading like 6 more of these over the next 6 weeks does not fill me with any kind of joy. So I think I'm out on those. I don't suppose you want to read it because you only read half of it. So
yeah. I mean, I just reading The two that I read were kind of strong, but I feel like I can't read it based off of those two.
Yeah, that's fair.
The Manipul art was fantastic. I thought the Dunbar art looked great too. So, and from what I saw, the Shazam art, that looks great too. So already stronger than the last one, you know?
It's definitely got a much better, stronger list of creators than the last one did. Like, there's no denying that. Like, but across both writing and art, it's just a much higher standard across the board. So, but fundamentally, I still felt like, you know, like it feels like this weird extra thing to read that I'm not getting enough out of any one of the stories to feel like I'm happy that I read it.